About to call the member for Maitland before I go off to Australia's morning tea. The member for Maitland.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and have a cake for me. Very, very good cause. Mr Speaker, I'm pretty passionate about libraries, and I was very pleased to hear that the Shadow Minister, Walter Cord, in the other place, was such an enthusiastic supporter of this bill. In fact, I think it's fair to say it's probably the most enthusiastically he's ever supported a piece of government legislation yet I know of. I volunteered in my local library covering books and shelving returns when I was about 9 years old. They're a place of organisation, order, quiet, peace and a sanctuary for the mind. And what special gifts, yes it was 15 years ago, I acknowledge the interjection. What special gifts we find in libraries are wells of information, wisdom, conceits and ideas, all to be found between the pages of books. Or so we used to imagine. My earliest memories of libraries were visits with my mum. They were places where adults hosted story times, puppet shows, and you could immerse yourself in the amazing worlds of imagination. I still remember the vivid pictures, both real and in my imagination, from my childhood favourite books, including The Cherry Family, Dr Seuss books, Winnie the Pooh, Peter Rabbit, The Tale of Jemima Puddle Duck, The Famous Five, The Chronicles of Narnia, Watership Down, The Magic Pudding, Snugglepot and Cuddle Pie, and school readers that my mother had kept from her childhood in South Australia. But the books that we borrowed from libraries were like a special gift. Imagine every week you could go there and immerse yourself in a new world of someone else's imagination. It was like borrowing the experiences of people all over the planet, conjured up by an author who had lived a completely different life from you. Growing up in Canberra, I was also lucky as a young adult to be able to go to the Australian National Library to look up any reference I needed for my university studies. We had the 2 hours to peruse the books, which made study so much more focused, rather than borrowing a whole stack of books from the university library, taking it home and then probably never quite getting to open them. That quiet space in the National Library was so important to my academic success and helped to allow all of us students fair access to texts that were on loan at our university library, sometimes for months at a time. It's lovely today to see my own daughter studying for her HSC at our local library in Maitland, as it gives her a quiet and distraction-free place. Libraries today continue to give these gifts and so much more. Libraries act today as centres of culture. Maitland Library's Look Who's Talking program has seen such an eminent stream of guests flowing through our community to talk about their books and their life experiences. From Bob Carr, from Gareth Evans to Jane Caro, Tracy Spicer, our own crime writer Barry Maitland, and the thought-provoking Michael Muhammad Ahmed, who was there very recently. The cultural life of Maitland is so enriched by this program, which stimulates our intellectual life. In these modern times, though, libraries provide very important and much-needed access to computers and the internet for those who can't access them from home. They provide technology workshops to help people understand how to use these important resources. They provide research support, literacy and reading programs, outreach programs, and of course, lending books. They share such a central role in maintaining a collective archive of our shared history. And libraries have always held far more than books or just newspapers. The National Library of Australia held the treasures from the world's great exhibition in Canberra in the summer of 2001 and 2, showcasing treasuries from libraries around the world, original music scores, artworks, sculptures, manuscripts, a letter from Mahatma Gandhi, papers from Eddie Mabo, Ptolemy's Cosmographia from 1478, Alexander Graham Bell's precursor to the telephone sketchings from 1878, early religious texts including a Dead Sea Scroll and Mamluk's Quran from the early 14th century. What possibilities, what inspiration can be found in seeing these amazing historical items all together? And I was very pleased, Mr. Speaker, when last night I was preparing for this speech and I got online and I Googled that particular exhibition, and nearly 20 years later I could actually remember all of those things, seeing them in the real life, but they were still there in the digital environment of the National Library. Libraries collect the hidden history of our society and culture in a comprehensive and all-encompassing manner. Unlike the internet, which can be changed, or Facebook, where we are filtered to see the things we want to or which suit our particular views, libraries stand as a testament to how we have thought, our knowledge, our music, our art, our poetry, our songs, our understanding of our planet and its boundaries, as they have all shifted and changed over time. And we should support this bill because libraries are the cornerstone of education and information and knowledge, and they should be complete. It is past time that we ensure that we collect our intellectual knowledge and history in a way that keeps pace with technological change. This legislation is crucial as it updates and modernises legal deposit in New South Wales, which is vital for historical and data collection purposes. This legislation will empower our libraries to be places of learning, interest and enjoyment for future generations to come, but in a way that actually expands them across the planet. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to Egypt, but it's an amazing thing to go to the Library of Alexandria. Now, we all remember what an important place that library has had in history, but the digitisation that has been undertaken there is amazing, and we can be sitting here in Sydney and accessing the archives or the collection of that online. It's an amazing opportunity offered by technology. It can only help us to improve our relationships across the globe. When we look at how differently people today, particularly young people, read and experience literature, it's vital that we collect items that will become important for them. I have a friend in Orange, Kelly Rimmer, who's a best-selling international author, but long before her books ever appeared in print, she was published in ebooks. Her works are amazing, strongly researched, and tell stories that are often difficult to hear. But she's very innovative in the way that she has developed her career. She's done it all starting on online platforms. She's going into another genre soon because she just loves writing so much. And it would be a shame to see such a famous Australian author, such as Kelly, without a full catalogue in our National Library collections. Use of the National Library Trove has been really important for me, and I know that in researching a lot of the work that I do as a Shadow Minister, I've even gone onto that collection to find books by people like Marion Hoskins, Why Doesn't She Leave?, which was a book about the establishment of the first women's refuge in Taree in New South Wales. And even today, in our own parliament, we digitise a lot of our information. Hansard is often a great opportunity. I know for me, going back to look at the speeches of my predecessors, I find that the themes haven't changed much for my community, sometimes in over 40 years. And obviously researching for the condolence motion later today from the Honourable Milton Morris, that has been helpful. We need to be able to have this all accessible. Currently, there's a legal requirement that all books are submitted to legal deposit libraries in New South Wales, and these are the State Library, the Parliamentary Library and the University of Sydney Library. This is a requirement that the publication of any newspaper, pamphlet, sheet, music, map, chart or plan has to be lodged with these bodies. This ensures there's an archive of publications for future generations and future researchers. And so this bill will allow for those electronic publications to be stored in these deposits. And it also means that publishers of digital or electronic material in New South Wales at the moment aren't required to deposit this material. And so as a result, our collection is fragmented and incomplete. But this bill will bring New South Wales in line with other states and territories. This bill will continue to require the delivery of book material to those deposit libraries under the requirements of the Copyright Act through savings and transitional arrangements. It will also extend the requirements for the Copyright Act to ensure that the collection and maintenance of publications, including electronic publications, can be undertaken by them. But the most important issue in this will be the resourcing. My real concern with this legislation is whether the government will properly resource them to do this work. See, the key thing here is that in order for the delivery of these items to libraries, there will need to be a receipt. There will need to be someone who catalogues that information and stores it. It'll also mean that those libraries can then also expand their activities to become collectors. My question to the Minister is who is going to pay for this? Mr Temporary Speaker, can I please have a short extension?
Extension of time is requested. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.
Thank you, Mr Temporary Speaker. So yes, my question to the Minister, who is going to pay for this? Per capita recurrent funding for libraries back in April last year was only $1.85, and it is not linked to CPI. Members opposite might remember Labor's detailed policy to double state funding for public libraries to $3.70 per capita, and for the first time also to link it to CPI. Labor also announced a $25 million library infrastructure grants fund and a hardship allowance of $500,000 per year. What was the government's response to this? In last year's budget, the New South Wales Liberals and Nationals slashed the existing grossly inadequate library funding by a further 18%. The New South Wales Labor opposition joined with Local Government New South Wales, the Public Libraries Association and most of the councils in our state to condemn these cuts and campaigned under Renew Our Libraries for them to be withdrawn. And I pay special tribute, of course, to the member in the other place, the Shadow Minister for Local Government, the Honourable Peter Primrose, and the Deputy Mayor of Sydney, Councillor Linda Scott, for their amazing work on this. And they got really around the state. And it started to hurt the government. Finally, the government came to the party with a way of going close to our commitments.
It's going to be done anyway.
But 2 months later, the government announced it would also provide an increase to library infrastructure grants. However, the New South Wales Liberals and Nationals refused to match Labor's commitment on per capita funding, saying it would only increase it by 25 cents annually, and they also refused to link it to the CPI. Labor was pleased that the Liberals and Nationals copied half our policy. We will continue to campaign to promote our policy that per capita recurrent funding to run the libraries and employ librarians and support staff is doubled and linked to CPI increases, because libraries need guaranteed recurrent funding, because libraries need librarians. And now that the government's giving them extra work to do, they need even more. My dear friend, the member for Port Stephens, who spoke before the Shadow Minister, came up with an easy way to explain the government's policy. 1, cut the funding to public libraries by 18%, attack Labor's plan to double the library funding. Step 3, freak out, steal half of Labor's policy. 4, claim credit and attack Labor some more. We need something better in terms of delivering a better library system in this state. It must be noted that this bill will essentially increase the workload of archivists managing New South Wales legal deposit libraries. And for any of you out there who doubt it, who think that electronic media is really easy to organise, try and organise your iTunes library. And if you think it can be automated, press that little button and then try and unscramble the egg of your music collection. It's a really hard task. Not only will the delivery of book material continue, it will extend to electronic publications. Will the government ensure that ample resources are allocated to these libraries? And I'd really like to hear from the Minister how that is going to happen. Will it ensure that there are enough staff to meet both these streams of content? And will it provide training to ensure those tasked with these additional responsibilities can meet them in a timely and stress-free manner? Will it provide adequate digital infrastructure, for example, archiving software and backup storage? These are all questions. As you can see, Mr Temporary Speaker, I am passionately committed to this legislation being implemented, but we've seen in this place just this last few weeks how this government will come in here, talk about how they can do things and how they can manage the government, and then the cost will always come back to the taxpayer and won't be found from, they're not upfront with the cost when they talk about these programs. This is too important to do it on the cheap. I commend the bill to the House, but I hope the Minister will answer my question.
Well, I thank the member for Maitland.